Imagine this, every bite you take is like sending a text message to your body. One meal tells your heart to pump harder, another tells your brain to slow down, and yet another whispers to your cells to store fat instead of burning it. Food is not just something you eat, it's information, it's instruction, it's power. And here's the truth most people don't realize. 7 of the most common foods many of us eat every day are quietly draining that power. They don't always look dangerous, but they're programming your body for fatigue, high blood pressure, weight gain, and disease. Today, I want to show you what those foods are, what they do inside your body, and how simple changes can flip the switch back toward energy, focus, and long-term health. By the end, you'll see that the choices on your plate aren't small at all. They're shaping the way you feel today and the future you're building tomorrow. When we talk about liquid sugar and energy drinks, we're not just talking about calories or sweetness. We're talking about how your body responds at a cellular and hormonal level every single time you take a sip. When you drink soda, sweet tea, bottled coffee with added sugar, or an energy shot, you're essentially bypassing the natural checkpoints that exist in whole foods. For example, an orange has fiber that slows the release of sugar, so your gut and liver can process it in a measured way. But when you consume the same sugar in liquid form without fiber, it's like opening a floodgate, glucose and fructose rush into your bloodstream. Your pancreas is forced to release a large surge of insulin, and your liver, especially with fructose, gets overloaded. That overload is converted into triglycerides and stored as visceral fat, the kind that wraps around your abdominal organs and quietly increases risk for heart disease, fatty liver, and type 2 diabetes. One of the reasons this is so concerning is the speed at which liquid sugar is absorbed. Chewing solid food takes time, and your body has mechanisms to detect when you're full. With liquid calories, you can consume the sugar equivalent of 3 or 4 donuts in just a few seconds, and your stomach doesn't feel the same sense of fullness. The brain doesn't get the same satiety signal, which means you're likely to keep eating on top of those calories. That's why studies consistently show that sugary beverages are one of the leading drivers of obesity and metabolic dysfunction worldwide. Energy drinks add another layer of complexity. They often contain the same rapid-absorbing sugars, but combine them with high doses of caffeine and other stimulants. For an adult, moderate caffeine from black coffee or tea can be fine, even beneficial in some contexts. But energy drinks deliver caffeine in a way that can spike heart rate and blood pressure, and when paired with sugar, you get a roller coaster of energy followed by a crash. For younger individuals, teens and even children who sometimes consume these drinks, the risk is magnified because their cardiovascular and nervous systems are still developing. In fact, professional organizations caution strongly against energy drink use in children. When you step back and look at the physiology, the picture becomes clear. Liquid sugar isn't just empty calories, it's a metabolic disruptor. It drives insulin resistance, promotes fat storage in the liver, raises blood pressure through its effects on the kidneys, and destabilizes energy levels throughout the day. And the more you consume, the more your palate adjusts to prefer that intense sweetness, making whole natural foods taste bland in comparison. But here's the encouraging part: when people cut out or even just reduce liquid sugar, improvements often show up in days. Blood sugar steadies, cravings drop, energy becomes more consistent, and the liver begins to offload fat. Your body responds quickly because it's been waiting for you to remove that constant metabolic burden. When we look at processed meats, things like bacon, hot dogs, sausages, and deli meats, we're not just talking about protein on your plate. These foods have undergone a series of treatments that change the way your body interacts with them. They're often cured with nitrates and nitrites, preserved with salts, smoked or cooked at high temperatures. Each of those steps adds compounds that are different from what you'd encounter in fresh, unprocessed meat. For example, nitrites can form nitrosamines in the body, which are chemicals that damage DNA DNA and increase cancer risk, particularly in the colon. The iron content in red and processed meats is mostly in the form of heme iron, and when it combines with these processing agents, it can promote oxidative stress in the gut lining. That's why large health agencies classify processed meat as carcinogenic. It's not speculation, it's a conclusion drawn from years of consistent evidence. But the risks don't stop at cancer. These meats tend to be very high in sodium, and when you eat them regularly, you're delivering a significant salt load to your kidneys and vascular system. Over time, this contributes to higher blood pressure. They're also high in saturated fat, and while not all saturated fats act the same in the body, when combined with nitrates, salt, and smoke byproducts, the result is an inflammatory environment that can accelerate cardiovascular disease. What you might notice first isn't something as dramatic as cancer, it's subtle signs: heavier digestion after a breakfast of bacon, sluggish energy in the afternoon after a deli sandwich, or swelling in your hands and ankles when high-sodium meals become routine. Another factor is the way we cook and eat these foods. High-heat grilling, frying, or smoking releases compounds like heterocyclic amines and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. These are known to damage cells and cause mutations when consumed regularly. So the issue isn't just the processing in the factory, it's also the cooking method at home. If you add processed meats frequently to your diet, your body is being exposed to multiple layers of stressors at once: chemical preservatives, excess sodium, inflammatory fats, and cooking byproducts. The encouraging point is that protein itself is not the problem. The problem is the form in which it's being delivered. If you replace deli meats with roasted chicken, beans, lentils, or fish, you still get the protein, iron, and nutrients you need, but without the harmful additives. Even eggs, nuts, and minimally processed dairy can offer the same satiety without the added risks. When people make this shift, blood pressure often improves, digestion feels lighter, and long-term disease risk decreases significantly. What we're really doing is choosing a cleaner message to send to our cells, one that supports repair and resilience, instead of adding stress. When we think about ultra-processed snacks and instant noodles, it's important to recognize that these aren't just simple foods that happen to come in a package. They're engineered products built to hit what's called a bliss point, the perfect combination of salt, sugar, and fat that makes them almost impossible to stop eating. Chips, cookies, and instant cup noodles aren't just convenient, they're designed for overconsumption. The problem is that when you eat them, your body responds very differently compared to when you eat whole or minimally processed foods. With chips or cookies, you get refined carbohydrates that spike your blood sugar, added oils that are often industrially processed, and very little fiber or protein. The result is a rapid surge of glucose, a hit of dopamine in the brain that feels rewarding, and then a crash that leaves you hungrier than before. Instant noodles and cup soups add another layer of stress to the body. They're usually packed with sodium, sometimes over half your daily allowance in just one serving. That sodium load forces the kidneys to retain water, which raises blood pressure, and because these noodles are made from refined wheat and fried in cheap oils, they digest quickly, driving insulin up and leaving you with another cycle of cravings. Over time, this kind of eating pattern trains your body to store more visceral fat, raises triglycerides, and promotes inflammation that underlies metabolic disease. And yet, because they're inexpensive, shelf-stable, and so heavily marketed, they've become a staple snack and meal option for millions of people worldwide. What's striking is how subtle the immediate effects can be. You might not feel sick after eating chips or a packet of noodles, but what you may notice is that you're hungrier 2 hours later, or you feel more bloated, or your energy dips in the afternoon. That's physiology giving you signals. Your body is struggling to regulate the swings in blood sugar and sodium. When this becomes a daily pattern, the cumulative stress adds up. Studies have shown that diets high in ultra-processed foods are linked not only with obesity and diabetes, but also with depression and poorer cognitive function, likely because of inflammation and nutrient deficiencies. The encouraging truth is that even small substitutions make a difference. Swapping a bag of chips for a handful of nuts, or replacing instant noodles with a quick homemade soup using whole grain noodles, frozen vegetables, and an egg, changes the hormonal and metabolic response dramatically. Your insulin response is gentler, your satiety hormones are stronger, and your cardiovascular system isn't burdened with as much sodium or industrial oils. Over time, those choices compound into more stable energy, healthier blood pressure, and less chronic inflammation driving disease in the background. When we talk about refined grains and sugary breakfast foods, what we're really describing is fuel that burns too quickly. White bread, pastries, and sweetened cereals have had the bran and germ stripped away from the grain, leaving behind almost pure starch. That starch digests rapidly, raising blood sugar within minutes of your first bite. Your pancreas responds by releasing insulin, and for a short while you feel energized. But because there's no fiber to slow digestion and no significant protein or healthy fat to stabilize it, your blood sugar comes crashing down. That mid-morning fatigue, the craving for more coffee, or the sudden desire for another snack, those are direct results of a rapid rise and fall in glucose. The long-term concern is that repeating this cycle day after day trains your body toward insulin resistance. When insulin is constantly spiking, your cells eventually stop responding as effectively. This is one of the earliest steps on the path toward type 2 diabetes. But even before reaching that point, these foods create volatility in your energy and mood. For children, sugary cereals before school can mean bursts of hyperactivity, followed by difficulty concentrating. For adults, it can mean inconsistent productivity and stronger cravings for quick fixes later in the day. Another overlooked factor is nutrient density. When grains are refined, you lose magnesium, zinc, B vitamins, and fiber, all of which play key roles in energy metabolism, mood regulation, and gut health. Fiber, in particular, is crucial. It stretches the stomach, slows glucose absorption, and feeds the gut microbiome, which in turn produces compounds that support immunity and lower inflammation. Without it, not only do you miss satiety signals, but your gut bacteria become less diverse, which is now linked to a wide range of metabolic and mental health challenges. On the other hand, whole grains provide a completely different physiological message. Oats, brown rice, whole wheat bread, or cereals made from minimally processed grains digest slowly. They produce a flatter glucose curve, steadier insulin release, and more consistent energy. Pair them with protein and healthy fats, like eggs, nuts, or yogurt, and you extend that stability even further. People often notice within a week of switching their breakfast from pastries or sweet cereals to oats with nuts and fruit that they no longer need that mid-morning caffeine jolt. Their focus sharpens, their appetite feels more under control, and they begin to enjoy the natural flavors of whole foods again. The key here isn't just about avoiding sugar or white flour, it's about reclaiming control of your metabolism. Every time you choose whole over refined, you're teaching your body to run on steady, long-lasting energy rather than constant spikes and crashes. Over months and years, that shift lowers your risk for diabetes, heart disease, and even cognitive decline, while giving you back a sense of stability in your daily rhythm. When we look at high-sodium packaged foods and sauces, what stands out immediately is how hidden this problem can be. Most people assume the salt they sprinkle from a shaker is their main source, but in reality, the majority comes from foods that don't even taste particularly salty. Soups, frozen pizzas, salad dressings, deli sandwiches, even bread. These can contain several hundred milligrams of sodium per serving, and most people eat multiple servings without realizing it. The average adult often consumes double the recommended daily limit of sodium, and because this is happening silently, many don't connect the dots between their food choices and the fatigue, swelling, or blood pressure numbers they see in the clinic. Physiologically, excess sodium places a burden on the kidneys. To maintain balance, the body retains water, and that extra fluid increases the volume of blood moving through your vessels. Over time, this raises blood pressure and forces the heart to work harder with each beat. Chronically high blood pressure, in turn, stiffens the arteries and accelerates the wear and tear on blood vessels in the brain, kidneys, and eyes. This is why high-sodium diets are strongly linked to cardiovascular disease and stroke. Even short-term, some people notice bloating, puffiness around the eyes, or swelling in the hands and ankles when they've had a particularly salty day. Those are the early warning signs that the body is holding on to more fluid than it should. There's also an interaction between sodium and the way your palate adapts. When you eat high-sodium packaged foods often, your taste buds reset to expect that level of saltiness. Fresh foods begin to taste bland, and you end up reaching for more processed sauces or condiments to compensate. The good news is that this works in reverse too. Within a couple of weeks of reducing sodium, your taste sensitivity improves, and suddenly the natural flavors of vegetables, whole grains, and fresh proteins taste richer. What makes this issue more complex is how cleverly sodium is built into packaged products. It's not just there for taste, it's also used as a preservative and texture enhancer. That means even foods that don't taste salty can be sodium dense. Reading labels becomes crucial. A single cup of canned soup can deliver 800–900 milligrams of sodium, which is half a day's worth for someone trying to stay within healthy limits. A slice or two of pizza, a deli sandwich with processed meats, or a few tablespoons of soy sauce can easily push you over the edge, without you realizing it. The shift away from these foods doesn't mean bland meals. It means rediscovering flavor through herbs, citrus, garlic, vinegar, and spices. When people make that shift, blood pressure often comes down in a matter of weeks, energy levels rise, and that heavy bloated feeling after meals begins to fade. Your cardiovascular system breathes a sigh of relief when sodium stops being a constant hidden stressor. Alcohol is one of those topics where culture and physiology often clash. Many people grow up with the idea that a glass of wine at dinner or a drink with friends is harmless, even beneficial. And while alcohol has been woven into human history for thousands of years, when we look at it through the lens of physiology, the picture is very different. Alcohol is essentially a toxin that the body prioritizes clearing above almost everything else. The liver shifts its focus from metabolizing fats and sugars to breaking down ethanol, because ethanol can't be stored safely. This metabolic shift means fat gets stored more readily, especially around the liver, which is why fatty liver disease can develop even in people who aren't overweight, if alcohol intake is regular. Another important point is the effect on sleep. Many people notice they fall asleep faster after a drink, but the sleep architecture is disrupted. Alcohol suppresses deep restorative stages like slow wave and REM sleep. That means even if you sleep 7 or 8 hours, the quality is lower. You wake up less refreshed, your memory consolidation is impaired, and your emotional regulation the next day is weaker. Combine that with the fact that alcohol increases nighttime heart rate and decreases heart rate variability, and you have a substance that is working against recovery every single time it's consumed. There's also the question of cancer risk. The data are clear that alcohol, even in moderate amounts, increases the risk of several cancers, including breast, liver, and esophageal cancer. This happens through multiple mechanisms. Acetaldehyde, a byproduct of alcohol metabolism, is directly toxic to DNA. Alcohol also generates oxidative stress and increases circulating estrogen levels, which can promote certain cancers. What's striking is that the risk doesn't start at high intake. It begins with small, consistent doses and increases from there. On a day-to-day level, alcohol alters decision-making and appetite control. After a drink or two, inhibition goes down, food choices are often poorer, and the extra calories from both alcohol itself and late-night eating add up. Over time, this pattern contributes not just to weight gain but to metabolic instability. The encouraging part is how quickly the body responds when alcohol is reduced or eliminated. Within days, sleep improves. Within weeks, liver fat begins to decrease, blood pressure trends downward, and energy in the mornings rises. For many people, this shift is almost surprising. They didn't realize how much of their daily fatigue, cravings, or mood fluctuations were linked to something they thought was harmless. Alcohol may be common, but it doesn't mean it's neutral. It sends a very specific set of instructions to the body, and the more often we remove it, the more those instructions shift back toward repair, recovery, and resilience. Your body is astonishingly responsive. In 7 days of better choices, less liquid sugar, fewer ultra-processed hits, smarter grains, lower sodium, and a pause on alcohol, you'll likely feel lighter, clearer, and more in control. In 30 days, your labs and blood pressure can begin to reflect that change. This is not a diet, it's a decision to send better instructions to your cells every day. Choose foods that fight for you. Your future self is already thanking you. Let's begin with the very next bite.